You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to episode 35 of Making Tracks. I'm your co-host Mark Newbold, and joining me today is a man who has spent all day doing interviews, making people happy. I was going to make an analogy that you like some wonderful Santa Claus character, but that just sounds ridiculous. So I'll say instead, hello, Mark.
Oh, is that it? Well,
you're the modern Santa Claus for the guy that only works one day a year.
Yeah,
not that we can talk.
But always empties his sack. Yeah. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm great after that joke. I'm very good. I've been busy as ever. We've had a busy week. We had an episode come out on Tuesday. We've got another episode, obviously, today. Another episode coming out next Tuesday. Busy, busy, busy. Site's busy. Star Wars is busy. There seems to be loads of online events happening left, right and centre. We've got loads to talk about. Obviously, we've got the Cassian casting. Yep. We've got Bill Holmes from the Rebel Legion coming on. We've got Dave Tree from Farthest From coming on. We're going to talk about Mandalorian Chapter 7. But, Mark, before we talk about any of that,
yes,
what have you been doing today?
So today I've had the honour and the privilege of speaking to Mr. Garrick Hagan, which has been a very wonderful and insightful hour or so chatting to him. This is for the Rebel Legion's Rebelthon, which you're going to hear more about in a bit. And that's been great. We did it over a Zoom conference call, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
We basically talked about everything, his career, which spanned decades, and surprisingly, I think more films and more famous people than I think anybody would actually realise. Obviously, people know him for Biggs Darklighter, for Red 3, so it was quite interesting. I mean, it was interesting doing the research beforehand, but it was doubly more so interesting hearing Garrick actually tell all these different stories about when he worked with Sir Alec Guinness and Sage back in, I think it was 1957, I think it was. So it was really interesting morning. And then now I get to speak to you, so.
Sorry about that.
I know. Well, you know, it caps off a nice Star Wars day, so.
Right, we will hear more about Rebelthon later when Bill comes on the show. We'll also hear about some quite literally phenomenal guests that are coming to follow this from also on Sunday when we speak to Dave Tree later on. Stay tuned to Fantha Tracks for more news on all of that. But before then, we got the news 4 days ago that 4 new cast members have been announced for the Cassian Andor Disney Plus TV series, which will be filming as soon as they humanly can and hopefully coming out next year. Those names were Stellan Skarsgård, Carl Soler, who I think we mentioned on previous episode, Genevieve O'Reilly and Denise Goff. The only person who we know is playing a role that we're familiar with is Genevieve O'Reilly because she was Mon Mothma in Revenge of the Sith and in Rogue One. Great news that she's back. Mark, what do you think? I mean, a broad question, as well as these actors being welcomed in, which we spoke about briefly with Stellan and Carl before, but what broader hopes do you have for the Cassian series?
I think this is going to shape up to be something really quite cool. The way I see it is the opening 5 or 6 minutes with Cassian down on the planet when he kind of shoots us at Tivik, I think is the guy's name, Informer. Yeah. If it's like that, then that's kind of cool. I think hopefully this will be a little bit edgy, you know, in the Star Wars sense of the word edgy, I guess. Having Genevieve O'Reilly there is probably going to mean that either Cassian could have some kind of interaction with Mon Mothma directly, or maybe this is one of those things where she's being the senator. You know, you don't actually get to have any conversations between her and Cassian, but maybe it's more like her denouncing the Empire on like these big, you know, holographic screens and stuff when Cassian's walking through a town or something like that. Who knows? The fact they've actually announced it means that she's probably got a decent sized role. My mind would think it's possibly, you know, she's going to have some kind of influence on the direction that Cassian goes and, you know, where his missions are. So it's quite interesting, I think.
You make a really good point in that it feels like she will be more central to this story than... Because we said it on previous episodes, because I'm stoked for this show. So I know it's going to be a show that we're... And being a rebel, so are you. So, you know, we're going to talk about this show probably more than many.
Possibly,
as we roll in towards it. But the sort of feeling from people like whoever asked for a Cassian show, and it's like, oh, he's the lead character, he's the Rogue One character, $1 billion film. There ain't many of those around, so if you can do a spin-off from $1 billion movie, you're doing something right. But just the era that it's set in and the time place that it is, and that Mothma, okay, by Return of the Jedi, which is not that many years after this, to be fair, she's more of a statesman, that sort of character, like Dodonna was in Star Wars, and those kind of characters, the older characters. But this is 5 years before Star Wars, and that's something else that came out in this news piece when they said they've sort of nailed down that it's 5 years before Star Wars. I put a tweet out saying I'm sure that's been out there for ages, because I'm sure we've talked about it on the show before. I thought that was understood. There's
a part of me that thinks there may have been some kind of graphic timeline floating around somewhere about I've seen, which obviously had the Solo, was it 10 years out, and Rogue One, and then A New Hope. And that there was a line for Cassian in there somewhere, but I don't think if it's actually been explicitly 5 years, maybe she's going to play that foil, that kind of anchor to Cassian, who could almost end up going down the same route that Saw Gerrera goes down, whereby it's like, it's the mission or nothing, and it doesn't matter who gets in the way, the mission takes priority, so therefore we'll do whatever we need to do to succeed in the mission. Maybe she's that calm and influence that is needed, and she's the one who's kind of putting the brakes on Cassian to say, hey, think about morality of what you're doing.
Yeah, and just thoughts as you're saying, all of that just comes to me in that, the Senate's not dissolved until A New Hope.
Correct.
So there's still a Senate, and Bail is a senator, and Mon Mothma's a senator, so I just wonder, are we going to see the Senate? Does it look the same as we saw it in Revenge of the Sith, or did they move to a different building?
Yeah.
How are they going to play it? I just think it's going to be phenomenal to see it. I think this series has got the biggest scope. Kenobi is very much going to centre around Ben, and any story will kind of have to fit a certain parameter, and that's fine. But it feels like it's sort of a bit like Mandalorian. I get why they had to go and do rewrites. It's kind of got that vibe,
Yeah.
But with this, the scope is phenomenal. I can't understand how people aren't seeing that the scope for Cassian as a series is bigger than pretty much anything else.
I think so. If this is a one that, especially if they're given it 5 years before, you've then potentially got at least 5 seasons. They're bringing back Genevieve O'Reilly. Maybe they're going to bring back Jimmy Smits to play Bail Organa. That would be cool, because then possibly you can have more of that political side of the Rebel Alliance in its early days, which is quite cool. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think possibly it would be a way to maybe ground the series so it's not all suddenly just kind of like action.
And also to see the flow of politics in the Imperial era. There's still a Senate, so there's still a purpose. Otherwise, they would have dissolved it after Revenge of the Sith. So I'd love to see the mechanics of how the Empire runs a Senate. All those early Star Wars radio plays, there was a lot of politics in those.
Yeah.
House tag and all that sort of stuff, the different houses that they sort of played into.
Yeah, the dining room scene with Leia.
Yeah.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, a Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
Me and Mark sat down and had a nice long chat with technically my boss of the Rebel Legion, Mr. Bill Holmes, and we spoke about lots of things, and in particular about the Rebel Legion's Rebelthon.
May 4th's coming up, obviously. I mean, this is around the corner, and one of the things that we had to talk about is like, what are we doing for May 4th? I mean, this is something we've never actually had to discuss. I mean, the bases and are constantly, they've got, usually everybody's overworked that day. They've got tons of event requests, doing all kinds of different and fun events in the community and kind of celebrating Star Wars. And this is going to be the first, May 4th that, I'm always off work that day. And generally the joke is, it's Phil's holiday,
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't quite understand him, but we understand he's not working this day. That's kind of how Rebelthon came from. One of our PR officers, he was like, "Hey, do you remember those old school telethons that used to be on in the 70s and 80s?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm old enough to remember, the Jerry Lewis telethon or whatever." And he goes, it'd be really cool if we did something like that around May 4th. And I said, I'm game. I mean, heck, I can juggle some milk bottles for a couple hours if we need to, and we'll figure out. Let's do something fun for people, and we want it to be a global thing. That was one of the things that, I kind of stressed about it is we are a global organization, and, we needed something, if we're going to do this for a charitable cause, we need to pick something that has a global impact. And I think we've started throwing some stuff out there on the PR team, and UNICEF came up for me because I said, that's one of the things, one of the few that I think has impact. It also has a deep impact with even Lucasfilm and Disney because of their part of the Force for Change. It running this by people and like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? This thing just started taking a life of its own, and it's like, and then we started talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we get some talent to come on? And, and I said, I'm kind of like, yeah, no one's going to do this. I'm like, no one's going to come on and do this. Come on. I mean, we're on our shoestring budget trying to make this thing go. And I'm amazed by the amount of people wanting to come on, that want to give content. I really am so excited that people coming, we not only are members doing this, but talent that have done and are doing hours of interviews and supporting stuff that this is starting to take a life of its own. And it's just going to be a fun day. I have to say that I'm really looking forward to it now, because I really wasn't looking forward for May 4th a few weeks ago. There's not much going on. I'm like, it's another day. I'm working. It's the first day I've been working in a long time.
And who else is lined up? I've heard of a couple of names, but could you tell us who else is coming on?
Vanessa Marshall was huge. I mean, the interview she did, and if everything goes well, she wants to call in live and talk again. I mean, we just got the actor that plays Nine Numb.
Oh, Mike Quinn.
Yes. And then we just got an email that, and again, I'm going to try to remember his full name, Greg. He plays Snap Wexley from.
Greg Grunberg.
Yes. Oh yeah. See, you guys are on this. You can do charades with me on this. Yeah. I mean, it's somebody that people know and are part of the community. But there's and these people are very fan driven. These people that are coming on, that's the great element for that. Big Dark Layer. I mean, exciting stuff. Paul Casey, Vanessa Marshall, which we've already talked about. Nick Kellington. Mark Thompson. Oh, Mark Thompson, that's an awesome. We got Garrick Hagan, which was big. Brian Herring, Angus, which of course is Gold Leader, correct? I want to make sure I get all the analogies right. You guys are probably on all of this stuff more than I even am. Derek Arnold, Chris Bartlett. I mean, this is some cool folk, I mean, you take Derek Arnold, Commander Powell in Rogue One. You got Garrick and Angus are from the original trilogy of folks. We've got, characters from the animated universe. There's a lot of stuff happening. It's just constantly going, And I've been talking to people all over, reaching out. One of the things, I was talking to Alvin Johnson last night. I was like, hey, come on, you want to come on and talk about R2KT and the programs that he does and some of his experiences.
Yeah.
It's just reaching out to folks and saying, hey, yesterday, I got 2 or 3 people we talked to that are just part of the, fan communities and that, just, to have some interesting experiences in that. I've got a gentleman that's a Lucasfilm character artist that he wants to come on and, do a live drawing and just hang out. And he's been a great asset. He's been a guy that even comes out with us and at events and just the excitement of the kids getting things like that. It's like, oh my God, he's just such a fun draw. I mean, you talk about a Wookiee or a R2 or something like that just totally you want someone like him, let him draw and hand this thing to, a kid. There's this silence, it's this bit of amazement. This is the thing that kind of goes for me is watching people's love for this and how this has come together. And now I actually feel like I actually have to be prepared, and I can't just wing this thing, you know? Because that's my personality type. That's why I joke about it. I'm the guy that gets up. It's time to go on whatever I'm doing, and it just came out of a few of us making, this would be really fun to do. And
the best things come out
of people are buying up.
Yeah, the best things come out of ideas like that, though, don't they? Little just chucking ideas around, and then something really cool comes out of it.
We're doing this we're doing it through Zoom meetings and on Facebook Live, and we're going to get like a charity to buy into this. We're going to even get support from Lucasfilm. I mean, this is these are all things that, thinking. And I remember I was chatting with Pete Gilbert. I was like, hey, I got this idea. And it's like, oh my God, that's cool. It's when other people start telling you. I mean, I didn't have the belief. It's like, well, this is going to be interesting. It'll be fun. But and the people go, oh my God, I love that idea. And then the graphics and going back to it, and everybody, it's just like, why don't we got some, actors to come in, and what if we did a Jawa cooking show? And, I mean, and we're all, and we got a Jawa cooking show.
Why not?
I mean, it happens. And it's like, wow, this is really cool because people really want to do something special for May 4th. And in my world, I kind of think, I think we all live in our own bubbles at times. And it's kind of important to me, but I really don't know how much is important to the, other folks. And it really is. It's so important for a lot of people across, across the world, and us dedicating 12 hours of time to come together. And it is a form of community and fellowship that we have with our fans and across the world, and people that mean a lot to us, and that to me is the most important part of this thing. It's making people feel like they're doing something.
You've got this as Rebelthon 2020. If this works and you raise a bit of money and people enjoy it, do you think it might become an annual thing?
I would love it to make an annual thing, to be honest with you. I think it is a very fun thing. I mean, would it always be around May 4th? Maybe. Especially with the craziness that would, if everything opens up again, it'd be hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But what if we did it on like May 25th, which was the release date of A New Hope? This has been such a fun project and such an honor to be something to be part of. It's part of that team, I think this really just came about in the conversation having 4 weeks ago.
That's a quick turnaround. That's a good turnaround.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like I said, well, let's not get too cocky. Let me contact UNICEF and see if they would even be interested, because we have to find a global charity. That was the one area I thought, I was like, it has to be a global charity. It cannot be just a U.S. or, Western based charity. It's got to be something that's truly global for us. I was like, well, they're going to probably take a while to get back to me. This is we are in a pandemic, and I get an email back, and I'm like, oh, can you give us more information? Can you show us how our logo is going to be used? And I'm like, sure. And here and send some stuff more. And they're like, oh, we like this. And this is how you set this up. And I'm going, oh, we got accepted. Someone bought this idea. It's wonderful, and because I really thought someone would shoot it down. I mean, I know that sounds awful from a psychological kind. It's like, wait, someone's saying, well, you really can't do that, or this is not going to work, or the technology is not going to allow us to do it. We're doing test runs, just like I did the video the other day on Facebook. Well, it was more of a test video to make sure all of our technology worked together to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's like, hey, can you just talk 5 minutes about the project? Sure. And so, unscripted and together. And I tend to do most things unscripted. It probably gets me in trouble sometimes, but, it generally comes, what I'm saying and thinking, comes from the heart, and that's the strength of our organization. The fandom is so huge, and it's like so wonderful wherever you go in the world. You see our fans, and it's just like you have a common community. Well, Mark, we met Celebration London. I mean, God, how many years ago was that?
It was 4. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, 4 June or July, wasn't it?
It's been 4 years.
Yes, yeah.
And it was such a great experience. Just the amount of people and, the work that all the folks did, not only on the Rebel Legion side, but, UKG, the Mandalorian mercs, that was amazing. That was such a great experience, feeling and seeing the groups together and people working towards the projects and some great folks, and, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, right? I think I sometimes downplay this stuff because I joke about, this is make believe and it's fun. And, as an adult, I get to dress up and be my favorite characters and create my own characters and all that stuff. Something, I loved to do as a kid, except, we did it with mop buckets and, and whatever, we're throwing stuff together. Now we're doing all this stuff and we're using screen and media accurate costuming and spending hours making small pieces that, the vast majority of people won't even notice. And this has been such an amazing part of my life. I've met people, again, this thing I say globally that I've met, it really feel like brothers and sisters and family that, again, if you had told me 13 years ago I'd get involved in this and this would be this kind of experience, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do. I literally, when I joined, I thought, I'll dress up once or twice a year and it'll be kind of fun. I'll find, do something with it. It's such a labor of love and it's such a wonderful community and honor just to be part of it in any way. I thank you so much for having me and I love you guys and what you guys do. We're going to get through all of this stuff and we're going to make it better because we adapt. That's what we do. I mean, creating this idea came from, the fact that we were given the script. This is what we can't do. So what can we do? We'll start broadcast at noon EST on our Facebook page, the Rebel Legion. There'll be a live stream starting at noon on May 3rd and run through midnight May 4th. If you're looking for Facebook and our address there, you go to facebook.com, THE Rebel Legion. And then again, anything you guys are doing for this, feel free to use the hashtag Rebelthon.
So late last year, in the States and in certain other countries around the world, The Mandalorian rolled out on Disney+. Massive hit, huge ratings, trending, zeitgeist-busting TV show. Took a bit of a time to get to the UK and to certain parts of Europe, but it's here now. And Chapter 7, The Reckoning, arrived last week. What did you make of this episode? It's a cliffhanger.
It's a cliffhanger, and I think it's the right cliffhanger as well. I think it was a fairly obvious cliffhanger in some respects that really if you're going to kind of put any kind of jeopardy and peril into a whole story of the Mandalorian, it's going to fall down onto the child. It was a really interesting kind of build-up because I kind of thought when the series was going along that, when we got to episode 4 and we meet Cara Dune, that she was just going to kind of tag along with him from that point on. So that he kind of collects a crew or a gang up as he kind of went through his kind of travels. But this is obviously a case of him kind of going back and kind of collecting the gang so they can basically try and just deal with the client once and for all. Generally, I thought it was a really good episode. I kind of like the duality between Quill and IG-11's kind of relationship to that of like Mando's and even Cara's. Cara really kind of stands out really, really strongly in this episode, both Gina Carano's performance and also I think that of Nick Nolte, that character. When it came to it, it does pull on your heartstrings a little bit what happens at the end. So yeah, I was really, really happy with this episode. And I can remember when I first saw it back in December, just before The Rise of Skywalker, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can go into Rise of Skywalker and not know what's going to happen to Baby Yoda.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. It was, as an episode, I mean, it was Deborah Chow again. So, like I said in the review, she's a keeper. And clearly Lucasfilm feel the same in Disney because she's directing all of Season 1 Kenobi, so that's brilliant news. He does play on the heartstrings because a certain character meets his demise, which is terribly sad because, as you say, well, if you listen to this review, we're assuming you've seen the episode. If you haven't, don't listen to the review. When QL meets his face at the end of this episode, the drama is it turned up to 11. You know, the whole sequence with the speeder bikes is very cool to see proper Imperial speeder bikes again. Everything about it was just so cool. And like you mentioned, the relationship between Kuil after he reprograms IG-11 and just the whole reaction to that. The one thing Mando's done so well is bringing these characters whereby you know Cara Dune's a badass. No doubt. Yeah. I mean, she looks like she could rip you in half, and she quite literally in real life could, because it's, Gina Carano. But, there's all these elements that you think, well, that's really well cast. And then the character's really well drawn. And Mandalorian as a lead character, a lot of people will look at that, and obviously there's the Boba Fett comparison. It's almost tricky with Fett because he's been around Star Wars for so long. You never actually saw him in action at his best on screen in the films. Yeah. It's almost like the legend of Boba Fett. Now, we know Boba Fett did all these amazing ththings that you just never got to see in the film. And there's a sniffiness about that in a way. So certain people today would say, if the Mandalorian fought Boba Fett, the Mandalorian would kick Boba Fett's ass and all that silly stuff. And it's just a pissing contest. It's silly, really. And I always look back at Django and think, well, Django's pretty much what Fett would have been. There's the obvious comparison there. You have seen Fett essentially on screen. You've just seen it in the guise of his father as opposed to the son. But with the Mandalorian, there's weaknesses in his character and there's foibles in his actions and just things that he does that you go, why are you doing that? Like leaving the ramp down on his ship all the time, which is just like the most laughable plot. I just love it because he's like, why would you leave your house for a week and leave the front door wide open and not expect to be robbed? So there's all these little cool things, but this was another great episode in a series of great episodes or a season of great episodes, and I loved it.
The second time that I watched this, I kind of did think that on one level, the flashback scene between IG-11 and Quill possibly went on maybe a smidge too long, and like it was almost ever so slightly like they were just possibly filling for time. But then knowing what we know about what happens in the next episode as well, I think it just helps to kind of create a character. Because when you think about it, IG-11, from what we saw in Chapter 1, is totally a different character to who we meet in this chapter. And so the subsequent sacrifice, which may or may not happen with IG-11, for those who haven't seen it, you need to have some kind of obviously emotional response. Otherwise, it's just another droid taking one for the team. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I kind of understand why they spent so much time on it. Whereas I think the first time I was just like, okay, well, it's a nice sequence and it's really cool because obviously, at least to me, I was thinking, well, you just sit down at a data terminal and you just program a droid. But yeah, I don't know if that's because it's Quill and he's a little bit old school. He doesn't have a technology, or actually if that's just how droids are. Some droids have to be manually shown how to do stuff, which is fascinating because you think about how many different variations of like doing stuff you could teach a droid. And so that no droid will be created equal if that's how they have to do it. And also actually it's a really long and lengthy process of doing it. I kind of think it's probably more likely he hasn't had either the training to be able to program a droid, or he hasn't actually got the interface there that he needs to be able to program IG-11 quickly. Surely, in my simple mind sense, you wipe a droid's memory, it's a blank slate, and off you go. You don't necessarily need it to unlearn what it's learned already.
Hi, this is Neil Scanman. You're listening to Panther Tracks.
What did you think about the whole Baby Yoda healing Grief Cargo kind of thing?
I was just thinking about that. I was wondering when you get to that. Yeah, I loved it because obviously when it came out, and this is another benefit we get now, where most of the world is synced up with Disney Plus, is that you can do these neat little overlaps. Again, somehow, I don't know how, we saw these episodes last year, so I did see this episode on the afternoon that I went to the premiere of Rise of Skywalker. So the scene with Baby Yoda healing grief, and then the scene with Rey healing the snake creature on Pasana made all the sense because great little link. I loved it. It was clever. It was nicely done. Little nods and touches like that throughout the timeline are perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was sat there again yesterday thinking if this episode hadn't have come out before the Rise of Skywalker, and I'm not going to say that it was definitely down to the Baby Yoda healing technique that they kind of released it a little bit earlier, because it was just before, I think they saw it in the States instead of like the Friday after. But I kind of think that if the first time we'd seen anybody doing some kind of Jedi healing trance was on Rise of Skywalker and it was Rey, I think people would have kicked off a little bit. But I think somehow, I don't know if it's because it's Baby Yoda and because his abilities are so innate, so to speak, they're so kind of like, he has, as far as we're aware, and we can only assume based on his size and how young he's meant to be portrayed as,
totally.
He's just doing it by instinct. So you kind of accept it. And at no point did I go, hang on a sec, we've never seen that before, because obviously we've got to see stuff for the first time. It just somehow seemed to kind of make a lot more sense and feel a lot more authentic that it came from the child than it had come from Rey.
I think also because he's an alien, you kind of accept the weird stuff more in a way when it's an alien doing it, because they're not human, And I got into a Twitter conversation about the scene in The Force Awakens where Rey and Finn get on board the ship, and when Rey gets in the Falcon, she's got a pretty basic knowledge of how to fly it. And then she takes off and she scrapes along the sand and she knocks that great big sort of entrance area over, the Macquarie-looking entrance thing over, and she wobbles away as they're all shaking their fists at her, saying, bring back my ship and all that. She don't know what she's doing yet, but you watch over that sequence, which is 5-6 minutes long, if that. You literally see her learn how to fly the ship. So by the end bit, when she outwits the TIE fighter and Finn takes it out with the broken cannon, which is a brilliant sequence, and then they fly off. It's like we've almost watched near as damn it in real time Rey learn how to fly the ship, because that's how her force connection works, that's how her force powers work. You see it later in the film when she shoots the blaster and she misses by like 10 foot and then she fires again, she hits him in the head, and then every trooper she sees, it's bang, 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 and they're going down like pins, because that's how she learns the force. She's awakening to the force. Because it's Baby Yoda, he can't speak. We know he's 50 years old, but he's basically an infant. It's, like you say, it's innate in him, but it's also innate in Rey. She didn't really know how to do the force transfer thing. She kind of figures it out, like the Jedi mind trick again in Force Awakens, she kind of figures it out in the moment. So, but I totally get that it's easier to take it from an alien character than it is from her. And also, you have the numpties online who want to sort of politicise it and say, oh, she's a Mary Sue, she's a this, she's a that. Anakin was very similar. Anakin didn't really know how he knew the stuff that he did. Qui-Gon vocalised it to Shmi. Oh, it's a Jedi trait. He can see the future, and he can do things, and he doesn't know how he's doing it, but he can do it. That's what Rey's doing, and it's what Baby Yoda's doing. So I thought it was a really nice link between the two.
I thought so, and it was interesting because just before that, we have that scene where Cara and the Mando are arm wrestling, and Baby Yoda force chokes her, and it's just, oh my God, that's just quite dark. But again, it just shows not only the power, but the fact that actually nobody on that ship, other than really Quill, has any idea what this little dude is capable of. And he has no guidance to know what is right or wrong. He just sees it as the Mandalorian being under attack or losing and doing what he did when he faced the Mudhorn, which is basically help his mate out.
He's kind of imprinted on him. It's like having a kitten or a puppy, isn't it? They kind of imprint really quick.
Yeah, totally, exactly, yeah. But the setup was a bit obvious. I think we telegraphed that a little bit, where you had Grief message him say, all right, it's all is forgiven, and it's like, at no point is he just going to forgive that, So, but obviously we see that face turn a little bit later once he's been healed and he takes down the two assassins. And it was great because we saw a Trandoshan was one of the hunters, I think, and they had some Niktos in there.
Nikto, yeah.
And obviously, Ezra Brack was fighting.
Yeah.
Cara. So it was quite a nice spattering of,
Legacy aliens.
Exactly, aliens, man. So what more can I say?
Not a lot. It was a solid episode. It was a good episode, and that cliffhanger at the end was just perfectly laying us out for the final chapter 8. It comes out tomorrow on Disney Plus in the UK and Europe, and we will talk about it on the next episode.
Spoiler alert, they all die.
I'm Anthony Daniels, and you are listening to Fantha Tracks. Well done.
Okay, so we're joined here today on Making Tracks by somebody that, if you've listened to the first 500 million episodes that we did, you'll be very familiar with this voice. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the show. First time.
Are you enjoying it? You're the listener.
First time caller.
How's it going? What have you been up to?
Well, in this current climate of madness, I've probably been making myself even more mad by Yeah, by doing probably more work than I'd be normally doing under normal circumstances. So for those who are not familiar, I run a toy shop, and although not considered an essential, it is essential for kids to be mentally kept all right. So every day we've been running a daily Lego challenge and building various different things to like get kids out there. And this has been running on Facebook to take whatever Lego you've got and build to a specific brief or objective. And I think I'm on day 35 now. So every day a different thing. It's way harder than it looks. Right? It is taking up so much of my time because you're like, I don't know what I'm building. And like today, it's.
Are these like scratch builds?
from nothing. So it could be like, build a helicopter, build an ambulance, build a whatever. The last few days, it's been build a secret retreat, and I built a hot tub. It's been build a delivery plane, build a supply plane, build a delivery vehicle, because I'm trying to theme it around the lockdown, build a mega rainbow. Today is a bake-off, and it's like build as many cakes and treats and sweets as you possibly can, because with all the craziness that's going on, and everybody's got like various problems and stuff like that, but from a kid and even from an adult's perspective, it's actually very difficult, especially when the weather's been so nice, to like keep everybody in and occupied. It's an impossible task. So by doing something like this, twofold, gives people something to do. Also, stretches the grey matter creatively, because you're not working to a blueprint or building the same thing. Every person's iteration is different. And everybody loves Lego. So I've been doing that. That's what's been probably occupying me, and then running things virtually, doing local deliveries and online as well. And then because of what's been going on, having to pull the plug on the physical events that are run. So we've had a G.I. Joe and Transformers show cancelled. We've had a toy show cancelled, had a Lego day cancelled. And now, sadly, the next victim has been Farthest From, which is the toy show cancelled. But rather than just like say, sorry, guys, we're going to try and do it virtually online through Facebook Live. Don't know what I'm doing. It's gonna be like
this is a learning curve,
but like, why not?
No, I mean, you say that. I mean, the whole thing about the Lego for kids, keeping the brains ticking over. You say toys aren't essential. Well, for kids of all ages they are. So hats off for keeping that going. But getting a virtual and like obviously it's Star Wars weekend as well, May the 4th on Monday. So it's the right weekend to be doing it. How steep before we talk about what's coming up in the show, how steep of a learning curve has it been to actually pull together some kind of physical or virtual program for Farthest From 22 Live?
So if you could think of of an uphill slope that's at 90 degrees and you're just running straight into that 90-degree wall, that's the curve. Because I've never done it before.
This is you and Darth Maul, isn't it? Pushing the stone up the hill.
I've never done anything like this before. And I know that there are there's been other examples and things like that. But it's kind of like not so much an emerging technology, but like it's one of those adapt or die side of things because of things that have been going on. And I think all of this has been functionality that is there in the social media that we use on a daily basis. But it's a bit like your brain. You're never really fully using the whole thing or expanding. You're just kind of like, you're right. Yeah. Cheers. See ya. And that's the extent of it. And then maybe put up a picture of a cat or something like that.
Don't say that. I'm obsessed with TikTok and cat videos. So don't say that.
Exactly. But all of this, the lockdown will have really propelled all of this as a general thing really forward, because all of a sudden people like exploring and seeing what they can and can't do. So it's not a physical replacement for Farthest From, and depending on the outcome of this. I mean, it's not going to be the same anyway because you're not physically there and there's not like all these toys to buy. And I can't, for example, work out a way to do a platform that people are able to buy stuff. But you don't really need to because there's a million awesome Facebook groups in particular that allow you to buy, sell and trade already. So why try and reinvent the wheel? What I'm trying to do is provide something that is positive in a time where people are starting to wear down a little bit because, you know, for some people it's been not just a few weeks, it's been 2+ months of lockdown. And that's okay. Yeah, because you know, everybody is running low. So if you could just like switch on something, see something that is vaguely interesting related to what you're into, then that's quite cool. And in the case of this, there's some cool content that is being pulled together. Some of it is interactive, so we're going to be running a couple of different quizzes. There's going to be like a general Star Wars quiz that if you go onto the Farthest From Facebook page, you'll be able to then participate in that live and answer the questions, and it will tell you if you're right or wrong. It's not like you're shouting out at the screen, and it's on a time limit, so it's like adding to that tension. We're going to do the same thing but for vintage toys because it's a vintage toy show. I'm going to be like doing talks. Don't know how that's going to go down, but like one of them is going to be about talking pre-internet. We're using the internet to access all of this thing, but I'm going to be talking about how I collected before the advent of eBay, you know, which was still years before social media. You know, how did you do it? You bought magazines and papers and you went to like shows, and then to dovetail in on that,
are you going to talk about Ultimart?
No.
You've got to.
Did you?
I've still got the banners.
So, Ultimart. I mean, like, talk about, you know, if the coin flipped the other way, that Ultimart could have been. Yeah. It genuinely was one of the internet's first price comparison websites. Now we take all that for granted now, with your insurance and your money supermarket and Go Compare and things like. But Ultimart was genuinely the first price comparison site for toys. Now, eBay wasn't even the biggest auction site back then, and eBay didn't do buy it now. It wasn't like you just went in there, saw something and, oh yeah, I like that, buy that. It was all auctions. It was all timed only. There was no like best offer. It would have naturally progressed as it did, but what Ultimart did was, I want to buy a Darth Vader. There's all these people that are selling a Darth Vader. That's the cheapest one, or that's the one that does free postage. That's the one I'm buying. And the whole point of that, we went into toys, was to then, it was something we knew, but the idea was to then take it into cars originally.
Oh, okay.
And you use that framework to then do it for cars, and then for cars it then be for whatever. But like, we started off in toys, but the goal was to like perfect it and then apply it to automobiles, because that was something that everybody uses, and then be bought out by whoever, you know. So it was, but the problem was you had the .com bubble bursting, and even though we had something that was working, the banks weren't prepared to, like, you know, because they were, at that point it was a dirty word, and they weren't prepared to like look into any of these things, and it was then difficult to carry on under those circumstances.
You know, in the sliding doors reality, you are my billionaire friend. I've never told you that
genuinely, because ironically, we were owed money by the Department of Education and Employment, and that was why we had to close, because they said we're not going to be able to pay you for several months. And so we were doing work for the government, and it was the government that kind of killed it. So we went to the bank saying, look, we are guaranteed this money, and it's guaranteed from Department of Education and Employment. It's coming our way. They can't pay us. Can we have a loan? And they were like, no, you're an internet company. And it was like, that was it. Like, okay, thanks.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zeb Aurelios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
And then I'm going to actually, in theory, it should work, but we're digitizing footage of a convention from the mid-90s, Empire Day, that was held in Watford. And it's an hour-long little documentary. And there's some great stuff in there. There's some interviews from like people who've sadly passed away during that period, like Dave Prowse, but also Don Henderson, who was General Tag.
Yeah.
He was, I think that was like one of the last shows he ever did, because he passed away 97,
Not long after, yeah.
But what's amazing is you get to see what, we take it for granted now, things like the 501st and all the amazing Comic-Cons and shows and things like that. But this was big deal back in the day. And to see someone in costume and stuff like that. So that'll be running. We've got Brian Herring, superstar Star Wars performer and puppeteer, but also huge Star Wars collector as well. He's going to be doing a live stream talking about collecting Star Wars and his time working on the movies and stuff like that. And there's a few other panels. Oh, Andy Preston as well from the Vintage Rebellion and the Facebook page Collecting Beyond the Toys. He's going to be doing a show and tell of British collectibles that are non-toy, so premiums like your Lions Made lollies and Dairy Lee and things like that. He's just going to be sort of like showing bits of his collection and stuff like that. And there's a few other little things up the sleeve, but I can't confirm them just yet. But if you're liking or following the Facebook page Farthest From, you'll see a little logo pop up, and then you'll know you're there because it will then say Vintage Star Wars Toy Show. As long as you're there, you'll be able to hear the details as they're released and some of the things that are lined up for the whole day. I'll be like a shriveled mess by the end of it, but it's worth trying. And here's the thing: under the current circumstances, I think you kind of get a little bit more leeway and people are a little bit more forgiving because they know everybody's like locked down and there's like limitations. Whereas if I'd set this out and said, right, we're going to do like an online internet show and it's going to be the biggest, best, then that expectation bar is way too high as it is, and then everybody Whereas if I do it now and it's in lockdown, people will understand that. They'll be like, yeah, it's rinky dink, but that was fun.
Rinky dink is good.
Yeah, exactly. Because everything I do ends up being that. So
that's brilliant. So if this works, which of course it will, Dave, if this works and you come away from it at the end of the day thinking, I've made something of beauty, is it something you think in parallel to the physical Farthest From you might just have a little noodle with it if it works out well?
I think it's fair to say I don't have the skill set for that. And it's if someone is out there that can do that, then that would be great. I mean, it would genuinely be quite cool to come along to a show and then see that it is also being streamed as well. That would be quite nice, because we joke that Farthest From it has its name because it is in the middle of nowhere. But I'm very grateful for everybody that comes to the show and supports it. It is a pilgrimage for many, but it is a physical limitation for the majority. So if there is a way that you can kind of almost beam stuff out there, especially things like the panels and talks and stuff like that.
The panels, that's exactly what I was thinking.
If you're really into your sort of Star Wars history, of like collectibles and merchandise, it's fantastic. So you can literally just be able to tune in wherever you are around the world and see some of this stuff. There is a real benefit to that. As to whether or not if A, I have the competence, knowledge to be able to pull that off, and B, the hardware. and C, Fordingbridge broadband.
Fordingbridge broadband is a that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah.
That if that's possible, who knows? But like in this sense, I think it's the other shows like the Lego show. I mean, I'm doing the Daily Lego Challenge, but like Roll Out Roll Call, which is the G.I. Joe Action Force and Transformer show. I would have liked to have done that, but just literally have had too much, done something similar for this. This will be the test bed, and we can always go back and revisit and do the same thing for those fans and that community. But where this has been several weeks now, I think people just need any kind of distraction and any way of connecting back again. And there's so many people done so much stuff already, be it online stuff, people showing their collections on like Facebook groups, the podcasts, like yourself and other podcasts that have been really knocking out loads of stuff, live streams, YouTube. People have been really pulling out the stops and really coming together on something that, none of us have ever really kind of had the experience to deal with before. So it's been great. And if I can kind of dovetail a little bit in on that with the help from yourself and from the All the Cool Stuff team that helps out with the events, and Simon Downs, who's been editing stuff together, then great. We've done our little bit to make someone's day a little bit better.
That's it. Well, I'm mega looking forward to it. It's going to be a busy weekend. There's lots of events. Hasbro have got stuff on Friday, and there's stuff happening Saturday, Sunday, Monday, obviously. But I think, given that reality, I would be in Fordingbridge on Sunday. I'm very glad that there's at least a small way of kind of feeling like there's a little corner of the internet that will be forever Fordingbridge on Sunday.
That's true. And if you watch the current little video that's been knocked up promoting the show, it's awesome. It's effectively taking all clips from Star Wars to like kind of mishmash together a rough message of stay at home and go to Farthest From. But the crowning achievement of all of this is the opening shot of Return of the Jedi, Vader's shuttle flying towards the second Death Star, which is orbiting the moon of Endor. But on the moon of Endor, it's like the Fordingbridge sign, like planted in it, and it reminds me of the old Asterix books when you'd open it up, and it'd always have the eagle like stamped in. It was like always from way above, it was kind of like sort of showing you geographically where everything was situated and where Gaul was in relation to Rome. It kind of reminded me of that. The Jawas going Farthest From live instead of the egg, I mean, lockdown is affecting some more than others is all I can say at this point.
Life will never ever be the same again, and neither will our sanity, I'm sure.
You got that right.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for being back on the show, Dave. And we'll be all over this all over the weekend, and obviously we'll be talking about it next week on the show. But good to speak to you again,
and you
mate.
too.
Fantatrax. Voodoo!
We are trying every week now or every episode to have listeners' questions. It's a regular question poser. It's young Brian from Scotland. Are you sitting down, Mark?
I am, yeah.
Okay, get ready for this. So the question is the droid bar service in Chalmers Spaceport Cantina, he's talking about Tatooine, an insult to Rui's years of service, and are their introduction a direct result in the drastic fall in sales seen by the low patronage in The Mandalorian? So basically, have they put droids in there because there's not enough people coming in to serve?
Well,
because it looks a bit quiet, doesn't it?
It does look a bit quiet. I think it's missing a jizz band. This is missing like a.
We're all missing a bit of jizz, aren't we? Come on.
Yes. Well, possibly actually the reason why maybe it's not necessarily the result of the drop in sales. I wonder if it's because there's just been a drop in sales that droids are cheaper than actual physical human beings to pay for. You'd imagine droids have got to be like, below minimum wage.
That's true.
You would have thought. I mean, maybe they just serve a good cocktail. I don't know. I mean,
well, I don't know. I mean, what would you pay a droid, and what would they spend their money on? I mean, oil. I've heard oil baths. 3PO likes his oil baths, so maybe they like pampering
and charging. Yeah, I mean, I don't. So what are the needs of the typical servant droid? That is a very deep and interesting question. One which will take some time to ponder over, I think.
Well, I think that's all we've got for episode 35 of Making Tracks. If you want to stay part of the action and up to date in all the Star Wars news, check out the Fantatrax app via the App Store on your mobile device. You can reach us via email at radio@fantatrax.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fantatrax. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review. We need some nice reviews and we want 5-star ones. We're not going to be bashful about it, we're just going to ask. On Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. We've got a busy weekend ahead of us, Mark. What are you going to be doing
I don't know. Nothing, I don't think. How about you?
Have you finished painting the shed? That's the big question.
See now that I deputised the girlfriend for that, so she did that.
It's a good word, deputised.
It's great, isn't it? To be fair, I think I'm going to be rearranging my vintage collection figures just because I've got a couple new ones in, and I really don't have space for them, so I need to kind of find a way to get more on the shelves without damaging the cards. So.
Nicely done. I'm rearranging my Fantasy Flight figures and bubble backs and stuff on my racking, so that's one of the jobs. And then, of course, tomorrow, Friday, it's and First Friday Hasbro. Sunday is the big day, really. Rebelthon, Farthest From 22 live. There's other events available. Obviously, the stuff coming on May the 4th. Matt Denton's doing the show. I think Droid Builders live, I think, if I remember. So there's a variety of shows. So plenty for us all to be doing. We will be back next Tuesday to talk about everything we've done, everything we've seen. Until then, take care.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.